Welcome back. This is WION. You're watching a special report about India and Pakistan's relations. Pakistan says that India's decision to not send Finance Minister Arun Jaitley for the SAARC Finance Ministers Conference doesn't matter. Pakistan's Minister for Finance, Ishaq Dar, said that individuals don't matter, but countries do. His comments came after the conclusion of the 8th SAARC Finance Ministers Conference. 4 out of the 8 member countries did not send their ministers to the meeting, including Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and the Maldives. Dar also said that sending ministers to the conference was every country's internal decision. So picking up the conversation again, Mr. Muni, where does this talk about India's diplomacy by not deciding to send someone to SAARC? What's the strategy behind that?
No, I think as you explained correctly, technically, if you are sending a representative, you are participating in the meeting. And we are sending a representative which is who is at a very low level instead of the minister. So in a way, India is participating in the meeting. But India has also given a very firm decision that the minister is not visiting you. You would recall that even during the Home Ministers Conference, Pakistan did not get 3 other ministers, which is Bangladesh, Afghanistan, and I think Maldives. Because I think even Nepal minister did not come. There was no minister appointed. Frankly speaking, there are not many hopes out of the SAARC as it is. And a setback to SAARC started in the last Kathmandu summit when Mr. Modi was there. And you would recall there were very promising projects on connectivity which were being put up there in energy, in transportation, infrastructure. And almost all the countries wanted these projects to be pursued further. But Pakistan was reluctant, largely because it doesn't want a connectivity between India and Afghanistan, and it probably doesn't want to connect itself with India for one reason or another. And this is where Mr. Modi said we will proceed in SAARC with all together if possible, and with some if it is not possible with all together. And this is where another proposal is started, which is we called BBIN, Bhutan, Bangladesh, India and Nepal, that if Pakistan is not joining it, whichever the country is willing to join in and work together will work together. I think that is the model which is continuing in SAARC. Therefore, SAARC as a whole seems to have been stuck up on India-Pakistan disputes on the one hand, on many other issues like terrorism also between Pakistan and Afghanistan, between Pakistan and Bangladesh. So we have a lot of problems inside SAARC, and sending a minister, not sending a minister will not really change the matters in any significant manner. But the way Pakistan is taking this position, I think Mr. Jaitley not going is a very clear indication that we are not happy with the way the host country is behaving.
What could some of these countries do going forward to stabilize the unity for future SAARC meetings? What could some of the other nations or regions that haven't sent ministers do going forward?
Well, the sending ministers is, in fact, there is a clause within SAARC that all decisions have to be taken unanimously. If there is one country which says no to a certain decision, that decision cannot be adopted. Therefore, what you need is a consent of the country. If the country gives consent to a certain decision, that will proceed further. And other countries, like as I said in Kathmandu summit, if Pakistan said we are not going along with these projects could not be taken up. And no other country can do anything. If you look into the past history of SAARC, there are so many summits which have been vitiated, largely because of bilateral or other kind of conflicts in one way or the other. So SAARC has suffered on account of lack of harmony and lack of synergy within the regional participants. And if, as I said, on political count it continues, it really affects and casts its shadow on the economic matters as well. And that's why the organization, which was primarily thought to be addressing the developmental issues, has not made much progress because it is stuck on political and security issues. Give you an example. 1987, we all decided we must fight together terrorism. And look what is the condition today. We again in 2002, 2003, we had another protocol signed on fighting terrorism. But look at the complaints against Pakistan that it is encouraging, it is supporting cross-border terrorism against its neighbors as a part of a strategic move. Now, if a certain country has adopted this as a policy, that we will use terrorism against our neighbors, there is no way that you are looking for peace or you are looking for any kind of cooperation or development. So, that is what the condition of SAARC is, and I think Mr. Jaitley not going there is a very clear signal. We believe in SAARC, but we do not believe and we do not approve of the tactics and strategy that are adopted by the host state at a particular point of time.
How about the situation with Balochistan? Recently, Modi was criticized for the province there. What are your thoughts on that discussion?
Well, Balochistan has a very different history. Balochistan is one area which after 1947 was independent for nearly 230 days. And Pakistan militarily marched into, the story of Kashmir and Balochistan to some extent comes up in a parallel manner.
Very similar situation.
Parallel, that Pakistan marched militarily into Kashmir and created the problem. Pakistan marched militarily into Balochistan, which was seeking independence or wanted to remain an independent, and forcefully occupied it. Kashmir became a different kind of a story. And therefore, what Mr. Modi has raised is a question of human rights in Balochistan. Of course, he has, in a very significant shift, he has given an indication that if Pakistan continues to interfere into Indian internal affairs, like in Kashmir, we would also not be quiet when there are human rights violations in other parts of Pakistan as well. And Balochistan is an example. This is why Balochistan has been raised. I must say one thing, that I think India, it is the obligation on India's part now to explain the situation in details, what happened in Balochistan, what has been happening in Balochistan. Most of the leaders and people are being tortured, most of the leaders are massacred there. The kind of, on the one hand, I think we also owe it to ourselves. We must explain the situation on Kashmir also, because earlier under the Cold War, the West was not willing to listen to the Indian story. And we did not go into the details of the Indian story. This is what I, as an individual Indian national, feel. And therefore, I would say that this is the time that since we have raised the question of Pakistan occupied Kashmir on the one hand and Balochistan on the other, maybe Government of India can come out with a white paper on both these two different situations as to what is happening in the areas which are being controlled by Pakistan.
And to sort of wrap all of this together, for those of you just joining us, again, Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif appointing 22 parliamentarians, 2 different envoys to highlight the issue of Kashmir. Again, we're joined by Mr. Muni. Where do we see all of this going? Is this discussion or is this strategy hopefully going to solve anything, or is this just another cog in the wheel?
No, I have a feeling it will at the moment, in the short run, deepen the tensions between India and Pakistan. It will raise to a kind of a diplomatic contest on the global level. But I think this is an occasion which India must make good use of in terms of explaining to the world what the reality in South Asia is, which we haven't done much. Pakistan has always talked about Kashmir. We haven't talked even about POK, which we think is an integral part of India. And we are for the first time now saying that we are willing to talk about Balochistan also. So I think, yes, the relations would remain tense, doesn't matter. But for a couple of years, let the world know what the situation is. And I think if the world gets to know, it would act as a very moderating influence on Pakistan. And maybe that opens a window for more constructive dialogue between India and Pakistan.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your insight. We really appreciate that. And thank you so much for joining us for this special report about India and Pakistan relations. I'm Archit Tashadri. You're watching World is One News. Thanks so much for joining us.